There are moments in every person's life when they face intense adversity. They're crucibles that forge who they become as individuals and as leaders. Now more than ever, we need leaders who are called to a higher standard, focused on leaving it better than they found it, and paying it forward to the next generations. Now, let's join Fire Chief Randy Brugman as he speaks with leaders from all walks of life, as he explores and learns from their personal journeys and the crucibles that have forged them into better leaders and better people.
Well, welcome back to another episode of the Leadership Crucible. Today we're going to talk a little bit about healthcare with Tony Jenkins, who's the Market President for Central Florida region, where he provides strategic oversight and leads a team in developing business plans to increase and retain membership, enhance brand viability, and coordinate employee engagement. Tony was instrumental in establishing Florida Blue's diversity efforts in 2001. Prior to joining Florida Blue, Jenkins served as Director of Diversity for CSX Corporation, the largest rail network in the eastern United States, and he spent 18 years with the Walt Disney Company in various leadership roles, specializing in hospitality management and human resources. Under Tony's leadership in Central Florida, Florida Blue has been recognized as a best place to work, an outstanding diverse organization, and a corporate philanthropy honoree. Tony is an advocate for several causes throughout the Orlando community. He is a past chair for United Arts of Central Florida and the Florida Commission on Human Relations. He currently serves on the board of Florida Citrus Sports, and he is a board of trustee at Stetson University. Tony is chair-elect for the Orlando Economic Partnership Board, where he also serves as chair for their DEI Task Force, engaging Orlando's business leaders across various industries. Tony has been recognized by the Orlando Business Journal as one of Central Florida's top 10 businessmen to watch and a CEO of the Year. And most recently, he received the publication's Diversity in Business Lifetime Achievement Award. He is also I4 Business Magazine's Business Leader of the Year recipient. He holds a Bachelor of Arts degree in Hospitality Management from Morris Brown College in Atlanta, Georgia. Well, Tony, thanks for joining me on the Leadership Crucible today. It's just an honor to have you on the show.
Thank you very much, Randy. Look forward to our discussion.
Yeah, well, thanks for being here. You know, health insurance today is an extremely challenging environment to be working in. And, you know, the first question I'd like to ask is what led you into the industry? What brought you into healthcare?
Well, Randy, it was actually by accident. I was working at Disney here in Orlando. Thought I was going to remain at Disney for the rest of my career. 2 hours north of Orlando, my mom took ill in Jacksonville, Florida. And I had to leave Disney and relocate to Jacksonville. Went with a company called CSX for 2 years. And a friend of mine said, Tony, Blue Cross is really interested in talking with you. And I said, I don't know anything about healthcare. I went home that weekend, Randy, and I did my research. Healthcare and transportation, because I was with CSX. And you know what? I just got through reading a book called Moving from Success to Significance. And I realized that this portion of my life, I really wanted to get more engaged with my community and meaningful work. And I felt like healthcare was a place that I could dig myself into because of the challenges and solutions that were needed. So that's how I got into healthcare, very innocently, not knowing the complications in the world that I was going to be faced with. That was 2001. And I'm still here 3 jobs later, but it was the best decision I've ever made.
So since 2001, what have you seen change in the profession?
Well, there's been some good and some unfortunate things. The good part about what's changed, the advances in technology, that's opened up doors to all sorts of additional ways that people can access the healthcare system, virtual, digital care. Home health care is really coming back, where people can get care right in their home. Those things are continuing to evolve, get better, technology, and also access is better also. You look at Walgreens, CVS, I mean, neighborhood retail outlets now have opportunities for you to visit a primary care physician. On the negative side, I'm going to say one word: affordability. The cost are a huge, huge challenge for all of us. What we pay for healthcare, what we pay to access care and services, to visit locations, we've got to get improvements in that area, or we're going to continue to price people out of getting appropriate care, where it's going to show up in their personal lives. When you don't get care, there are all sorts of unfortunate situations that you will be faced with that you can't afford. You end up in the hospital or emergency room. So good and bad I've seen over the years.
Yeah, we see that a lot in the fire and emergency services, and I know you work closely with them, but oftentimes the point of initial access into the healthcare system is through the 911 system. And that's exactly because people have either they don't have a primary care physician or they have no affordability to go to a doctor, so they wait until they're so significantly ill, then they call 911, and it puts them in a precarious situation, and it costs probably 5 to 10 times more to treat them at that point than it would have if we would have done it differently or sooner. So
yeah, and on top of that, the coverage care, the insurance costs are also what I hear the stories about what people are paying for their premiums also is just so out of step with the incomes that people are making, and the percentage of your income that you're paying now for health insurance costs is just not at the levels that they should be. So.
Yeah, it's really a significant challenge, I think, for a lot of folks, and hopefully we can get a handle on that as we move forward a little bit better than we have in the past. But so you've worked in you said you worked at Disney and worked in the rail industry for many years, so you've had some different perspectives working in different environments. But how important do you think it is to really be focused on excellence no matter what field you're in?
That's a great question, and I'm so glad that we're having this discussion, because throughout my career, I've worked for three leading organizations, three large organizations. Also, when I was at Disney World right now has close to 70,000 employees. CSX has probably 30,000. And Florida Blue Cross, we've got 18,000. So as you can imagine, with those large of employee bases, there's a challenge from a leadership standpoint to make sure that your mission, your vision, your behaviors are at a level that you're serving appropriately throughout your communities, throughout your service area. But all of it boils down to leadership. All of it boils down to the standards that each of these companies have put in place around how you're going to behave, both internally and externally. I will tell you that I have chosen to remain at Florida Blue because of the leadership team there, their character, their integrity, and their aspirations to do the best for their internal employees and for the community in who we serve, which is excellence, in my opinion. So to me, excellence and leadership, they go hand in hand. You can't do one without the other, and that's not our goal. Is not to have. Our goal is not to focus on profits and margins and revenues, but they're all there. They're going to be there if you do the right things and you focus on excellence. So excellence is a huge word, and my team knows that I focus on that.
So you brought up the word accountability, and I think in today's environment, as we look at the landscape of what's going on in our country, whether it's in the political arena or in many corporations, accountability slippage, if you will, is pretty great. And I think from a leadership perspective, you can't achieve excellence when you're having that kind of widening the plate of accountability, if you will. So, how do you address that?
So all of us have goals in any business that any of us are in. We have goals, we have targets, we have to we have a desired outcome. To be able to get to that desired outcome, there are certain steps, certain tactical steps. But to start with the tactical steps, you must have a strategic plan, strategic goal. And you have to know when you're off track, when you're not meeting those standards, and how do you make sure that you are overcoming those barriers, coming up with the right solutions. And you used the right word, accountability. We have to hold ourselves accountable for staying on track. And as long as we are supporting each other in a respectful and a trusting environment where you have to have candid conversations, you have to be honest with each other, and in that environment, you can reach your goals. But it's a culture, Randy. It's a culture of openness, a culture of trust, and a culture of transparency, as I would say, is very, very critical for thriving businesses to consistently have that culture of openness, trust, and transparency to be able to get to the right results.
Yeah, you bring up three really, I think, really important points. One is whether you're a Florida Blue with 18,000 employees or you're the mom and pop shop with 10 employees down the street, you got to have some kind of a game plan. You got to have a strategic plan of where you're going, but you've got to link that to your tactical objectives, your tactical goals of what you're doing every day that should be supporting those strategies. And oftentimes in organizations, there's a disconnect.
You're right. You're absolutely right. And let me tell you something. Competition is fierce today, right? And we see it. But listen, our teams, we don't spend a lot of our time on knowing what the competition is doing, what steps they take. We want to focus on our ability to understand the preferences and the needs of the customer. We don't do deep dives into the into the competition. We want to do deep dives into understanding our customer, understanding their needs, understanding their preferences, and getting very, very good, very, very skilled at that. Any business has customers. And as long as you can serve your customer at a certain level, then you should be able to meet whatever goals. Sure, there's going to be technical problems, there's going to be operational challenges, but you've got to keep the customer at the center of whatever you do.
Yeah, excellent point. That kind of leads into the third point that you brought up, and that's the culture. The culture of the organization is often what drives that, correct?
Absolutely. And our CEO, I can't say enough about. The first thing that he is, I would tell you, is authentic. He is about as honest, open, and transparent as a leader. He is the way that he speaks to me. He speaks to a customer. If we walked into a fast food restaurant, McDonald's, whatever, he's going to give that same level of respect to that person that he deals with there. And that allows people, Randy, to open up to him. He's not distant. And so people will share with him and other leaders exactly what the opportunities are. Listen, some of our folks on the front lines have the best ideas, have the best answers. But if they don't feel like their voices will be heard or listened to, they're going to keep it bottled in. They won't share it because they don't feel like they're a part of the success of the organization. We welcome all of our employees for feedback, for statements, for opportunities to help us succeed. And that starts with the culture. We have a culture of learning, development, and growth and openness, which has benefited us throughout the entire enterprise.
Well, and I think the more that we understand about culture and organizational performance, I think it aligns with as we look to, attracting that top tier talent for our organizations. Because I think what we're seeing today, especially with the generations that will be forthcoming into the workforce, is they're looking for that cultural piece to align with their value sets, aren't they?
You're right. You're absolutely right. And let me share something else with you that's very important in today's world. You cannot have a culture where the focus is on one individual. If an individual feels like it's all about me, I have all the talent, I have all the knowledge, I'm the superstar, follow me, then our organization may not be the best place for you, because we operate in a great team environment. Everyone together contributes, and we're very selfless. We want to work for the best of the entire organization and for the betterment of our members. And it cannot be only about one individual over here that's drawing all of the attention, that's taking all the credit, that understands that you follow me. Sure, we want to follow you, but we're with you as a teamwork. That's the other aspect that I value about our culture, is that we're very inclusive rather than exclusive.
Yeah. Well, the old saying is there's no I in team. And, I think some of the best organizations are reflective of that, because they just really, they do have a good, authentic servant leadership style embedded in their organization. And you can see it in the performance, not only the bottom line, but how they treat their customer base.
Right. And listen, and it shows up in your actions and behaviors. We've seen it written on paper. We've seen the team and how people can put all sorts of words on paper, communication, values, but when the rubber meets the road, will you live that out on a daily basis? And I've seen that from our leadership, putting it to the test. When challenging times come, will you stick to being authentic, being transparent, communicating with the organization? And that's, words speak louder than, or action speaks louder than your words. And we've seen it over and over again. And you see it at top organizations as well.
Yeah. And if it doesn't start at the top, it's not going to be driven through the organization. That's for sure.
Yeah. Can I give you one example?
Yes, please.
When the George Floyd incident happened, we wanted to hear from our Black employees. Our CEO hosted a town hall session. He himself did this, where he allowed our Black employees to just share whatever's on your mind, no retribution. Everything was done virtual because it was in COVID. We had over 1,400 employees calling in on the Zoom. Matt Garrity hosted that session. It was emotional. It was raw. It was authentic. It was real. That showed our employees knew who our CEO was after that session. That's the mark of a great leader, in my opinion.
So, one of the things that we had discussed previously was this concept of the Florida Blue retail centers. And you had talked about how that started and then kind of how it's taken its life of its own. So could you share a little bit about that? Because I think it's a unique story.
Matter of fact, there was an article when those first came out. They're called the Florida Blue Centers around the state of Florida. And the New York Times came down to Florida, visited one of those, and wrote a story on them because they said it's unusual, highly unlikely for a health insurance company, generally behind corporate walls, and you can't reach them. You can reach their customer service center 800 number, but they're hidden. We wanted to dispel the myths that you cannot reach us, you can't talk to us. We built these we used to call it retail centers, but they're not. We don't think they're a place where people can go in and buy an item. So we just call them Florida Blue Centers. But we've got 30 of these around the state of Florida where individuals can walk in now. If you have questions about your benefits plans, if you've got a claim question, a claims challenge, many of us have dealt with folks on the other line of 800 number calls where you're on hold. You can get to a face-to-face person to answer your questions. We have nurses. We have three types of services in these centers. We've got customer service reps. Individuals can come in, any problems answered. We've got nurses there. If individuals want any questions about wellness, a complicated health condition that may come up, if they want a free health risk assessment, you can step into that location center and get it done. And lastly, if folks want to come in and purchase a plan, you can do that as well. We offer free Zumba classes, yoga classes. These are right in the community, and we view these as a new way of individuals getting their most challenging questions related to the health of themselves and their family members right in their neighborhoods now.
Well, it's just a great concept of, not only, I think it's a great concept for any business is taking your product right into the community. You're right. And generally, think about it. These are products that have been viewed as very expensive, that you had no choice but to pay them. And they're tied to the most challenging situations sometimes that we of our family members will face. And so we've got offices there where people can have their privacy. They can sit out in the open or have privacy. And so we try to make sure that we're listening to the customer and meeting their needs in that environment. I get calls. Listen, our customer satisfaction scores from those Florida Blue centers hover around 90%, by the way. Wow. Well, I think it's kind of an outgrowth of, I think, what we're seeing happen in the whole healthcare industry is, and we're seeing it on the emergency service side as well, is the more you can take services into the community and not have them search you out and figure out the matrix of what the system is, the closer we can get to the customer, the better off we are.
And to us, what complicates it in Florida is the diversity of the customer. Highly Hispanic, multicultural, and we have to thrive in that environment as well. When you think about Miami-Dade County, 2 million individuals, close to 70% Hispanic. Osceola County and Orange County here in the Orlando area. Osceola County is over 50% Hispanic. So again, we have to meet the needs at whatever our customer makeup looks like and comes to us in. We have to make sure that we're meeting their family needs, their personal needs, speaking in their language, and understanding everything about them. So that's another challenge. Not a challenge. It's just a reality of the world that we live in.
Yeah. No, and I think you've designed a really effective strategy to deal with that and to facilitate, I think, just good customer service. So congratulations
Yes.
on doing that. So,
Yes, thank you.
I know you've faced a lot of situations in your life that were challenging, faced some adversity, and I wanted to know if you would share a couple of those and how that shaped you as an individual and how it's shaped you as a leader.
Sure. And I had my own personal health journey. I worked in healthcare. 3 years ago, I tell this to people and they don't believe me. Show me the paperwork. But I had a massive stroke in March of 2019. After about 5 days in the hospital, I said to the doctor, I said, was this a mini stroke? The neurosurgeon looked at me very sternly. He said, Mr. Jenkins, the blood clot was totally blocking your brain's oxygen supply. That's what we call a massive stroke. And Randy, I'll tell you that several things worked in my favor. I was 10 minutes away from the hospital. I was with someone who immediately recognized what was happening and called 911, got me there. A stroke is a time situation. You have to make sure that you're getting the individuals in the right care setting, and that was me. I'm a person of faith, so of course I feel like I had an overseer watching over me that day as well. And everything was positioned to where I don't have any paralysis, any deficits today. Now, that first year, I tell folks, because it was still a brain injury, still a heart. It wasn't a heart attack; it was a brain attack. The rest of 19 was hell. For me to cognitively get back to this place, it took a while for my brain to reconnect and the neuroplasticity to take effect. But I'll tell you, Randy, I'm a much better person today than I was pre-stroke. I wouldn't wish a stroke on anybody. Not that I'm a much better person because I had the stroke, but I'm a much better person because of what I felt I'm now paying attention to in my life. It was a great pause for me to rethink my life, rethink my job, my career. And I have read in the past 3.5 years, I've read 350 books ranging on different topics. And I'm soaking up life now because when you're that close to mortality, you feel like you've been given a gift. And so I love creating relationships. I love my job because of what we can do. But my connection to humanity is much deeper now. And I love doing these podcasts, talk about leadership, because it's still all about how we treat and value others. Stripping a lot of things away, that's what it's about. And so I've taken my personal health journey situation and turned it into what can I do now to give back to the world.
And I know you were doing that before, and I know you've continued to do that. But what are some of the things? I mean, I know you're connected with the community in many different ways. Yeah. But how are you doing that?
So a couple of things in my role at work. I want to make sure that I am sharing my learnings. I've had 42 years in a corporate environment. I'm mentoring 4 people internally in the company right now because I want to share with this next generation coming up aspects of things that I feel they should focus on, things that will help them become better managers, better leaders. So internally, I want to be able to shape and mold our leaders for tomorrow. Great company we work for, but it still takes leadership, succession planning. So I'm doing that internally. Externally, there's so much opportunities and need in our communities. I can't get on every board. I can't join every association, but there's a couple of great organizations in the community that I've locked arms with, that we are all about making our communities better. One organization is about transforming an underserved community. A lot of business leaders have joined this project, and that way you can have an impact on not only the generations that are currently there, the seniors and the older adults, but what about the youth? What about the children that are growing up in that community that have gone without resources? How do you make sure that they get resources today? So I'm positioning myself, Randy, to give back to the community, externally, to join organizations that are doing good, changing lives. I call it being culture makers. And then internally, how can I make sure that our next generation coming up in this organization are going to be prepared to meet the new challenges that are going to be facing healthcare in the future?
Yeah. I think culture maker is just an excellent way to describe that. And I mean, it's really a core element of one of the things that we chatted about was just what's the foundation of good leadership, and culture maker is probably, the underpinning of it all, isn't it?
You're absolutely right. I'm reading a couple of books right now, specifically about culture and about what does work mean? How should we be viewing work? Well, if you think about it, work is so important to everyone in the world. I was reading a book and it said, what if all work went away? What if everything with work went away? Randy, everything would dissolve, because everything that we have, everything that we experience is related to somebody doing work. The clothes that we wear, the houses that we live in, the books, everything, there's some aspect of someone giving of their skills and their talents. So we can never get away from the auspices of work. But the key word there is how do you do work? How do you deliver work? And then what's the environment that you want to do your work in? It has to be around a culture of excellence, a culture of certain standards. And what's the future of it as well? You have to make sure that you're building a culture for tomorrow, and we cannot be silent, because there's so much counterculture that I want to say, some of us in voices have to speak out against certain aspects of culture that aren't positive. You can't be silent. So there's some counterculture messages that some of us also need to stand up for in today's world also.
Yeah, and I think for any organization, your culture is related directly to your sustainability long-term in whatever field you're in. And,
you're right.
If you don't build a culture to sustain your organization and to build your talent pool to be able to do that, right, you're not going to be around.
Right. Well, listen, we've seen examples of that many, many years ago of Enron.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Right. That you're not going to survive without building some core tentacles of values. Your values that your organization lives by is, like you said, is what sustains you. What's your foundation? If your foundation is not solid, it's going to crumble. And your foundation has to be built on certain principles and certain standards. That's what upholds your organization.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've had hundreds of examples of companies that, if you look at the Fortune 500 list from 75 years ago, about 90% of the companies aren't there. And 75%, I think, is, if the stats right, from 2000, or in the last 20 years, so 25 years. So it's really, really critical that we build that foundation and are looking long term and not just to the next budget cycle. So,
listen, I was in a meeting today, and one of the things I shared with the group today was, as we continue to look at the world that we serve, we can't only bring our messages to get better by our internal only focuses and our internal strategy. We need to have an outside view also. What are we hearing? What are we listening to? Where are the voices coming in, and the strategic insights that we're getting from the external environment as well? Can only be internal. And so we have to make sure that we're meeting the needs and the preferences of those we serve. And that has to come from stakeholders that have an outside view in your business. And listen, sometimes, like you said earlier, sometimes those messages will sting. Sometimes it's not always what you want to hear, but it's where you have to get to reach that next level, in my opinion.
Yeah. I mean, that's the only way that you're going to position your organization to be successful in the future. Yeah, I've done several strategic plannings that were insular, if you will, just to the organization, and I've done a couple that were community-based strategic efforts, and the community-based strategic efforts were a much more fruitful exercise. And it really did force us to step back and look at kind of the way we were operating, because you get a different perspective from those that you're serving often. So I have a final question for you today, Tony. If you could leave 5 or 6 takeaways today for the audience about how to become a better leader in the future, what would those be?
Thank you for asking that question. Here's what I would tell you. This country, our communities are not static. They're continually moving, changing. We need leaders today that are creative, Randy, that are listen, the best leaders, in my opinion, are the ones that understand the world that we live in today and are creating to meet those needs, can see and be visionary to meet the needs of tomorrow. You have to be ahead of the game a little bit also. So leadership today is remember I said culture makers. It's about creating, it's about developing, it's about meeting the needs. And that is such an element that is so needed today. Now, that's the role that a leader should have, in my opinion. Creative, innovative, but you must behave with a level of integrity, because people will not follow someone who is not full of character, who's not authentic. I would leave your audience with that those types of leaders will never go out of style. Well, whatever industry you're in, you will always be a necessity that's needed in the world, because again, we're constantly moving, constantly creating, and we need leaders to help guide us and take us there, in my opinion.
So how do we balance that out with what we're seeing going on in our country with, we don't see that. And yet we see people that garner support, and they're not doing that. So how do we, I guess, have that discussion with our younger generation about where's that balance, right?
Yeah, and that's an interesting conversation, because we have to send the message that, and you said earlier about servant leadership. We have to teach the generation coming up that true happiness and true joy will come when we're serving others. It's not about power. Don't seek power. That's not an authentic way for you to be able to move throughout society. But if you can get into a place where you focus on others and not yourself, take your eyes off of yourself, focus on the need. And there are some great people out there, Randy, that are doing the right thing. But when individuals, things go off track when people seek power, in my opinion. And it's inauthentic. It's not going to benefit or help the masses. They may seem like it's going to help the masses, but it's designed to help prop up one person or a group of people. And we should be there for all of humanity. This entrenching where people get in their corners and not moving to the center is not going to help us as a society. And that's what we need people to understand. What works for the general good for all of us? And that's the message that we need to send to our younger folks coming up today. It's not about you. It should be about the bigger group. So
yeah, and well said. I think that's true for our country. It's true for local government, and it's true for any organization. When there's this us and them mentality, or power versus I have more power than you have, and vice versa. It's just a very damaging environment. And so, point well taken, and hopefully we can continue to share that message so our next generation does a little bit better than our generation's doing.
Exactly, Randy.
Yeah, Tony. Well, thank you so much for being on the Leadership Crucible. Your insights just tremendous, and appreciate all you're doing in Florida, and will continue to do, and making a difference in your community as well.
Thank you for having me on. Really enjoyed the conversation.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Leadership Crucible podcast. If you have a story of adversity you'd like to share, we'd love to hear it. Visit us at theleadershipcruciblepodcast.com and join us next time as we continue to explore how to live lives of success and significance.